Hello, everybody. It's JJJ, the Six-Button Samurai. If you've listened to my previous efforts on ruminations of a Six-Button Samurai, welcome to the first episode of Oh God, It Hurts, a podcast that is a trans-Pacific dialogue between a guy in Tucson and a guy in Osaka, Japan, who have been friends for more than a quarter century and have slightly divergent but overwhelmingly common interests in the world of video gaming. With me is my fantastic co-host, person who left our hometown a good 14 years ago to join the JET program, GameAgent ET. How are you, Eddie?
Good, thanks, James. Thank you for having me join you in this broadcast, and I'm really excited to hopefully just have a lot of fun, talk a lot about video games, and just let people know about what kind of I guess perspectives we have, and also I feel like since I live in Japan, I've seen a lot of things, and maybe that will be of some interest to people. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
excited.
you've been there for a good 14 years now, right?
Yeah, as you said before, I was in the JET program for 5 years. I was in Fukui Prefecture, which is pretty much countryside as you can get. And after I finished 5 years, I moved to Osaka and tried to make it as a teacher for a career instead of just being on a program because I enjoyed teaching so much. And the rest is history. And yeah, I'm loving it here. And I think I'm probably going to be a lifer out here in Japan.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
No, because I know, I think you and I both had that experience of like, we grew up in this place, which is very different from Japan.
Yeah.
Um, but we both sort of developed that same affinity for like roughly the same cradle of video games, growing up with the NES, the Genesis, the Super NES.
Yeah.
Um, we'd both read video game magazines and we'd see coverage of import games and, you
And
know,
we met while you were working at a video game store.
mhm. I
um
was working at a long defunct video game store at the Tucson Mall. Um, and Eddie became a regular there. And
there's
it
a
wasn't
funny
long
story.
after.
There's a funny story. Can you tell it?
Is this me not understanding what your actual name was?
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
please.
Okay.
I love the
So,
story.
um, you know, me and some other people that we knew that were like mutual friends, like most of us were pretty loud and outgoing. And Eddie, being raised in the household he was as like the younger son in this big Chinese family, he was not the most outspoken of people. And for whatever reason, like it was just one of those things where like, when you're a retail worker, you have a lot of regular customers. Some of them you like, some of them you don't like. Sometimes you like a person enough that you actually bothered to learn their name. And I began to learn that this person had a lot of friends in common with me, some of whom will hopefully eventually appear on this podcast as well.
Yeah, I hope
But
so.
for whatever reason, I had got it into my head that Eddie's name was in fact Henry. And like, he would leave the store and one of my coworkers that I was also friends with would come in and be like, "Oh, who bought that?" And I'd be like, "Oh, Henry was here. He bought that." And so it was like months, if not like maybe a year and a half later, after I started seeing him regularly in my store and at different arcades in town, that I learned that his name was in fact Eddie and not Henry.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things where it's like, good Lord, how did we allow this to happen? Like, that's
Well,
just ridiculous.
I think you asked me straight up one day when you said, how come you never told me your name was Eddie and not Henry? And I was just looking at you and said, "Well, j dude, you're like twice as big as me. I'm not going to argue with you."
Right.
I don't wanna get hurt or anything. You can
Which,
call me whatever you want.
I mean, this was true. I mean, this was an era in my life in which I was sort of toying on with the idea of walking on to play college football, and I
Yeah.
was of that size.
You're as big as an offensive guard.
Right.
So, if
Right. It's
anyone that
true.
knows
I mean,
football, yeah, you
yeah. I mean,
know how big they are. So,
I'm
and
6'5" and corn fed through the fence. So,
yeah, and
you
I'm
know,
like,
and you
right
were
now,
just like,
I'm a
don't
buck
anger
50.
it.
Yeah, I'm a buck 50 right now, and I'm
Yep.
only 5'7", so
You
I'm not
were Link dealing with the Hinox out in the hills. You're just like, I don't want to make this thing mad. Let's
Yeah,
not do
yeah.
that.
I just wanna play video games.
Uh-huh. So yeah, like we both had that sort of commonality and we had a lot of friends in common. And, you know, as the arcades began to die off, hanging out took the form of Friday night fight outings, usually at my apartment.
Yeah,
And we'd wind up going through phases where like one game would be the shit for months on end, and then it might peter out. We'd start playing something else.
yep,
There was always sort of the eternal classics that we would like return to, your Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, your Alpha
yep.
2, your Night Warriors,
Yeah,
your
I focused a
Halo
lot on,
F98.
yeah, fighting games, but then there was also the Halo days when we had the
Mm-hmm.
legendary LAN parties, and we
Yes.
had other people bring their Xbox systems, and we'd play Halo and Halo 2 together,
Right.
and those were some fun times, and I think, some of our viewers can relate to that, you know?
Well,
Uh
that's one of my favorite stories to tell about you. Um, you had a very unique way of celebrating victories that I
Which were
think
rare. You were
I think
so
what
good at that game, and for me to even get any sort of victory in that game was monumental, so I had to do something special anytime I
right.
won.
So tell the people what you do.
Yeah, well, I would go we would be in 2 separate rooms. We'd have
Hmm.
2 Xbox systems and 2
At
TVs, and,
least, sometimes
yeah,
more.
and, yeah, we talked so much smack the whole time.
Hmm.
And it would
Oh
get to
yes.
me because I would be the one that would be getting hit from behind, like, the rifle butts from the back of the head that would kill you
Right.
instantly.
You get
I
meleeed.
I would get meleeed to death almost every time. So,
Hmm.
I remember one time, this just pent up anger built up so bad that when I finally I don't know if it was, our team that won or if I won in kills or was it like a singles game, but I remember I won, and then I ran to the other room where you guys were, and I started doing push-ups on the ground. And I thought you were gonna kick me in the gut when I did that because
No, it was no. That's the thing, though, is that I was so taken aback by the audacity of it that, like, any sort of ire that I might have had just
Yeah,
melted away. I was like, that is the funniest damn thing
but,
that I've ever
that
seen. Because it
that's
wasn't just that you were doing push-ups.
yeah.
You were also just like, oh yeah, you like that, buddy? Huh? Oh
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, you like that? Yeah,
Uh-huh.
but see, that's, why, uh, we became such good friends. I mean, you brought this out of me, like you
Right.
said, I was a very quiet person. But with video games, I started to make friends locally and also started kind of come out of my shell. I used to
Right. No,
just
it allowed you
only
to let
talk.
your freak flag fly, you know?
Yeah. And I have
Yeah.
you and our buddies to thank for that.
Hmm.
And also because of the title of our podcast, we always had these little quirky things that we'd say because of our friendship that other people would listen and say, "What? Why the hell are they laughing? What? I
Right.
don't get it." And then we'd be giggling like school children, because
Uh-huh.
we'd be quoting like very obscure, like pop culture things that you would have to be a huge fan or like someone that would pick up like very minute things to understand what we were saying, or
Well,
you
that's
had
the
to be
thing.
part of our clique.
Yeah. With Oh God, It Hurts specifically,
Yeah.
like you would randomly utter that if like you were catching a beat down in the middle of a fighting game or
Yeah.
like watching a replay,
Yep.
you'd go, "Oh God, it hurts!"
But you know where
And
we got that? I got that from our friend Sebastian,
right,
uh, because he got it from a movie called Terminator 2, which everyone
uh-huh.
knows about. So,
Well,
can
the
you?
thing is, it's the most weirdly like throwaway moment of that movie. It's
Yeah,
basically the big shootout at Cyberdyne.
yeah,
Arnold's T-800 is coming down the hallway, and he
hmm
encounters all the SWAT team members, and he's shooting them in the legs because he has promised John Connor that he wouldn't kill anyone. And then there's a moment where he takes hold of that gigantic gas canister cannon, and
yeah,
he's shooting those gas canisters to gas out the remaining SWAT members. And there's a point where he nails one of the SWAT team guys in the back, and the guy collapses to the ground, and he's like reaching for his back. And it's not even emphasized like in the sound mix, but you hear him go, "Oh God, it hurts!" And
yeah. It's not
I
even loud.
no, it's not even loud. It's not like a catchphrase with a movie. It's like the most throwaway thing just became this thing in the context of our sitting down and having these marathon gaming sessions. And I
Yeah,
think that's not an uncommon thing that like every sort of group or clique of friends that sits down and enjoys these things ultimately sort of comes up with their own weird little dialect, you
yeah.
know?
And
Yeah.
I think that's why I feel this is a good title because it
Mhm.
kind of brings out that whole aura of how we became friends and stayed friends, just like our little kind of weird little, I don't know how to explain it, but just nuances or little things that help us, uh, you know, tick.
Right.
It
It's
just
all
makes us
just a
laugh.
set of shorthand and references for like
Yeah,
a fairly specific time in our lives.
yeah,
And also the "Oh God, it hurts" thing, like, with the
yeah,
Hertz HC, you
yeah.
know, it's it's a
Speed
silly
of
thing
a
to play on
yeah, processor
monitors refresh rate.
or a processor like a, you know, like a
Right.
computer chip or the processor of a NES or Super NES, things like that.
Hurts.
So yeah. Oh god, it hurts.
Oh God, it hurts.
It hurts.
So yeah, that's essentially who we are,
Yep.
and we're gonna get into our next segment, which is called Water Cooler.
Cool. So what are we gonna
So for this first episode, our water cooler topic is Revenge of the Handhelds.
Yep.
Now, one sort of key difference between myself and Mr. Game Agent ET here is
Yes.
that I have long been much more of just kind of a straight ahead, like console and arcade machines are my bread and butter. There have been times when I have owned handhelds. There have been handheld games that I've really loved and enjoyed. Um, chief among them would be something like Advance Wars Dual Strike, which I love to pieces on the Nintendo DS.
Yeah.
But my man Ed here has always been a devotee of the handhelds. I remember,
Oh, most
his was the
definitely.
first time that I saw Neo Geo Pocket Color.
Yep. I love
Um,
that thing. I
right,
have 3 of them, I think.
right. You were the first person that I knew to wind up getting like the Game Boy Advance SP.
Yep.
Um, you've always been at the forefront of that. So in the year 2021, to see this moment where Nintendo has what is functionally a handheld format not just do well, but really carve out an incredible place for itself in the market and, you know, be riding on a wave of success that might lead it to be their most successful platform of all time.
Yeah.
And now to have Steam hopping on that train and looking to get into that sort of handheld market space with Steam Deck.
Yeah.
What does this moment feel like to you, Ed?
Well, for me, I think it fits a lot of people's lifestyles nowadays because a lot of people are getting more and more busy, and
Hmm.
especially in Japan, uh, you see a lot of people playing their smartphones. And I know it's the same back home in America too. But in Japan, it's like everyone has to go on trains, long train rides just to
Hmm.
get to work. Uh, Sometimes it takes about 45 minutes to an hour, sometimes longer. And then
Hmm.
you also have kids who, they don't have smartphones, but they play on their parents' smartphones when they're allowed to. And the thing about uh, portable gaming in Japan, because Japan is a small country and apartments aren't very big, and they usually share uh, living spaces with their families, even when they're grown up. Like, people when they graduate from college, they still live at home.
Yeah, like
So,
multi-generational situations are a
yeah.
pretty common thing.
So the last thing some people want to do is play their home systems at home with, and they're 30, 40 years old and their mom is there and their dad is there and their grandparents are there, things like that. They want privacy. So
Yeah, you don't want to have to
sometimes,
stop and explain Bayonetta
yeah.
to your grandma.
Exactly. So they rather go out and play in the game centers, or the
Hmm.
before COVID, obviously, or they, when they go to work, they're on their phones, things like that. And we were
Hmm.
worried. I was worried personally for a long time that, oh my God, because of the popularity of smartphone games, I think some other people around the world felt the same, that console gaming was about to become extinct because, uh, well, especially in Japan, like
Well, I mean, even
smartphone gaming is
Nintendo
so.
started publishing smartphone games, right?
Yeah, it got to that point where they were getting pressured by stock market pundits saying like, "Oh,
Hmm.
you guys got to get into this because that's where the money is going." And
That's even
granted,
interesting though, because when you look at those offerings, like,
yeah,
you had Super Mario Run and you had the Mario Kart one. I don't
yeah.
know if there were others offhand,
Animal
but like,
Crossing, Fire
yeah,
Emblem. Yeah,
but like
those.
Pokemon Go,
Yeah.
but like none of those were like, you could tell just by looking at those games that like this was not like Nintendo putting in their ace pitcher
Oh, no. No,
to
definitely
just
not.
throw something
They
out. You know what I
they
mean?
were forthcoming about that too. They said, "We want these, smartphone games to be like a taster,
Hmm.
a sample, so
Right.
that if you're really interested in these games, maybe you should, buy our systems and buy our games on our systems." And that's
Hmm.
how they marketed their smartphone games, and they also gave it to other people to work on. They didn't work on it, in house. But
Right.
I think so that was starting to take off very, very fast, and
Hmm.
it got to the point where, oh well, Nintendo was kind of reeling from the Wii U because the Wii U was kind of like, it was a home console still, but it was confusing as to what it was supposed to be. Many people thought it was like the sequel to the Wii. Like, what is it? Like, do you add it on to a Wii, or,
Right.
they just didn't know what it was. And frankly, I don't think Nintendo really knew what it was. So when they kind of sat down and said, okay, uh, well, we'll just take what we learned from the Wii U with that, separate screen on the gamepad, and kind of put that technology to our next project. Lo and behold, you had a Switch where, wow, you you're telling me you can use this same system on the go, and then you can hook it up to something to play it at home too, like on a dock. Wow,
Right.
and it took off. And
Hmm.
before you knew it, like, at first I was skeptical because even though I love portable systems, when I got one and I had it in my hands, I was like, this is kind of big. I don't know if a kid would be playing on this thing. But
Right.
take it from me, right now, I moved to Japan and I've been in Japan for 14 years as an English teacher. So right now I teach at a elementary school.
So
And
you've got your fingers on the pulse of the youth.
yes, I do. And
Hmm.
I see kids all over, like, playing out in the park, bringing their Nintendo Switches, and they're
Right.
just playing with it, and they're having so much fun. And it kinda sees the market because you know how I said before, kids, they wanted to play something, they would have to wait, for their parents to say, "Okay, you can play on my smartphone," or "Here's a hand-me-down, play on that," before they could play it. But, when the Switch came out, it was like, "Have at it. Here you go. Here's your own thing. Leave my smartphone alone." And then the
Hmm.
kids just had a lot of fun, and, you know, they also had the Switch Lite, which is a little bit more friendly to kids, it's a little bit smaller and a little bit more durable.
Right.
And, yeah, I think that's what really saved Nintendo in Japan, for at least. Because,
Right.
the PlayStation 5 is still selling pretty decently, but if you
Hmm.
notice, anytime you read any of the sales reports, the weekly reports that they have in Japan, you're
Hmm.
gonna see almost every time Switch software game, the games are gonna be in the top 10, almost
Right.
the entire top 10 most of the
Hmm.
time,
Right.
because that's how much power a portable system that you can play at home has in Japan. And I'm not sure if it has that same sort of appeal in other countries, but in Japan, it was definitely a game changer.
Right.
So, yeah, that's
No,
why.
it was definitely the fulfillment of, it's crazy to think of like just how poorly the Wii U performed for Nintendo,
Yeah.
but I mean, without having tried and failed with that particular conceit, they might not have come up with the Switch.
Well,
So,
yeah, it had some features that they used for the Switch, you know what I mean?
hmm,
So
yeah,
having that sort of how should I say it? Oh, you could play on the TV or you could play in the bathroom, but they just
right,
extended it to wherever you want to go instead of being limited to like a few, you know, 10 feet or something. So, yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, me being a big portable gamer, yeah, it was nice to see that because uh I'm still a busy guy and I my favorite place to game is at a cafe. I
Hmm.
hate playing at home right now because, home my apartment's really small and it's a little messy, so I don't want to spend too much time playing games at
Right.
home. So I rather, like, for me it's more relaxing to go out and play video games at a cafe. So yeah, but
Right on, man.
yeah,
Well,
I'm
no,
really glad.
like I was saying, it must be really gratifying for you to see like a handheld format like
Yeah.
take up that much space in the marketplace and actually have others looking to sort of adopt that format and try to carve out some success for themselves doing so.
Well, the technology is getting better, and it's probably ironically thanks to smartphones because now smartphones and tablets have much better processors inside of them that can rival. I wouldn't say rival a PlayStation 5 or even a PlayStation 4, but very close to it. So I
Well, that's
think
the
that
thing. I mean,
was,
we're slowly getting to that point of diminished returns with just raw graphic horsepower. I mean,
yeah.
you're at a
And
point now where, yes, if you want to render everything in an extremely realistic fashion, that is very expensive in terms of computing power and,
yeah.
the new platforms, the Series S, Series X, and PlayStation 5
Yep.
naturally have a huge advantage at rendering those kinds of things. But, it's also this sort of world of indie games and retro things
Yep.
that the Switch does exceedingly well now. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting to see the games market continuing to sort of diversify and sort of find, whatever way it is that you're most comfortable playing, there seems to be a pretty good solution for that.
Yeah. And it's great to see that. I mean, Nintendo always had that philosophy that it's the games that should be more important, not the graphics. And
Right.
it's turning the tide's turning in their favor. So
Yeah. No, that hard
hopefully,
that
yeah, hopefully they'll ride that wave and be smart about it,
for
and
sure.
keep it for years to come.
Yep. All right. That was great for our water cooler segment. Woohoo! So now we're going to move into a segment we call Now Playing, which is obviously where we talk about whatever it is we're happen to be playing at the moment.
Okay.
I presently, so I have a checkered history with a game. That game is Yoshi's Island on the Super NES.
I
Um,
love that game. I was
Here's the
surprised
thing.
that, yeah, you haven't
You were surprised I
finished it.
hadn't beat it yet.
Yeah.
See, here's the thing. I picked that up as a brand new import
Hmm.
back in 1995.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was also regularly playing games with this guy named Dave,
Yeah.
whom we will mention from time to time as he also worked at that video game store
Yep.
that we met at. Um, and the thing is, he and I like grinded on that game pretty hard for like maybe a good 5 or 6 days and
Yeah.
got to the end. And for whatever reason, like we never actually beat it. Now,
Yeah.
keep in mind, like we got to the last level. I know what the final encounter looks like,
Yeah.
but I've never actually finished the damn thing. And it's
I
bothered me for a really long time. However, it's been one of those situations, and some of you might relate to this, where
I do.
like
I definitely
if you
do.
get really close to the end of a game and then you don't finish it, every time you encounter that game later on, it kind of pisses you off. You know what I mean? Like it's just sort of a reminder of something that you failed to finish. And
Why
so
didn't you finish in the first place? That's the question that,
I don't even remember now why we didn't just plug all the way through and finish the damn thing. I don't
Yeah.
remember what happened.
Yeah. Maybe life
But
got busy.
something happened. And keep in mind, like, this is also the era in which, like, I basically just had this shitty part time job at this video game store. I was also going to community college, not in a particularly successful manner. Was not a serious or focused student in that era at all.
Yeah.
And so, for whatever reason, that game slid. And every time I would begin to play that game again, I would not get very far, and I would just be like, fuck it, it's going back in the pile. I don't care.
Yeah.
And so, a few weeks ago, actually, it was on the 4th of July holiday.
Yeah.
I was visiting a friend of mine in Phoenix, and wildly enough now, Phoenix actually has like a lot of mom and pop video game stores,
Oh, really?
which I didn't know about. I was kind of surprised to learn that. I learned
I
that
I
from a
I
YouTuber's video.
Yeah, I heard of the gaming zone. That's one I know. Did you go to that one?
We went to that one as well as
Nice.
a few others, like One Up Gaming, I think,
Oh, I don't know that one.
and a couple others that I can't remember off the top of my head. But
Yeah.
um, I managed to land a Super Famicom
Yeah.
and a copy of Yoshi's Island.
Nice.
And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to approach this as if I'm playing it for the first time.
Good.
Like,
Good.
just ignore that which has happened before. Just sit down with it. And the thing is, like, it's been this unbelievably rewarding experience. Like, it's such a beautiful game. It's got wonderful level design.
It does.
I think part of what irked me way back when, like, it was almost a little bit of like the Metal Gear Solid 2 thing, where like I was stoked to be playing Yoshi and be playing a Mario like platformer.
Yeah.
But the fact that I was not playing as Mario was just a little bit like, you know what I mean?
Really?
And that was just at the time. But now, like, and that's putting aside like how irritating the Baby Mario noise is. It is irritating.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's irritating for a reason.
yeah. I mean, you want to get them to shut them up, right? I mean, that's
Exactly. Yeah.
that's
You want
a
to you
great
want to
incentive.
retrieve. Exactly. You want to retrieve him as soon as possible.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's been a fantastic experience. Just like, all right, I'm going to just let this game flow into my brain and discard any previous emotions, associated with failure or not beating it before. Like, just live in the moment, enjoy it for what it is. And man, that game, they're still really like Nintendo themselves have not yet managed to clone what made that game great with any of the Yoshi follow-ups.
No,
You
they
know what I
haven't, I
mean?
don't think. You're right.
I mean, that game is unbelievably tightly crafted. And more interestingly, like, even level design wise, it does a very different thing where, like, you've got a smaller number of levels than we'd grown accustomed to with the last few Mario titles. But those levels are long.
Yeah.
They
And
are long and they are challenging.
there's incentive too. I
Right.
think the red coins, right? And the points.
Yeah, you want to get the 5 flowers, the 20 red coins, and then have a full timer of 30 stars
Yeah.
to get
And
a 100 on each level. And then that opens up bonus levels
and I
within
love
each
that.
of the 6 worlds.
Yeah,
And
because yeah, I'm a completionist, so that's why I really love that game, and I pretty much beat that game 100%, like with all the
mhm,
levels, uh,
yeah.
with 100 point scores. So yeah, it was really fun.
So
But yeah, keep
yeah,
going.
I am embracing that game anew for the first time, and it's great. I'm sitting at like level 5-4 right now.
Good,
I'm probably gonna play some more of it tonight, but like I'm not in a
nice.
hurry to beat it. I'm just savoring it, and
Yeah.
it's really hitting the spot right now. What are you playing right now, Ed?
Um, I just finished Blaster Master Zero 2 yesterday,
Okay.
and I did that because Zero 3 just came out recently. And
Okay.
I was trying to finish it before number 3 came out, but things, got a little busy, and the game's actually kinda it can be kinda hard at times. So, that's
Hmm.
why I decided to just go with the flow and don't rush it because the Zero 3 is gonna be there. So, you don't have
Hmm.
to worry about that. I already pre-ordered it, bought it through the eShop, and it's, once it was available, it just gave it the green light to play it if I wanted to. So, but yeah, I think anyone that has played Blaster Master for NES, and how good that game is, anyone that's a fan of that, I think they would enjoy playing at least Zero and Zero 2 because the storyline is kind of interesting. It's actually a mix of many things. It's a mix of the original Blaster Master, the Japanese version of this game that was called Metafight. I don't know the whole name, but
Okay.
some of the story is blended into that, and also the Worlds of Power books that they used to write for Blaster Master. A little bit of it became canon because from some people they were really impressed with like the stories that they made from that series, that small series. I don't know if you heard about it, but there was I guess, a group of people that made books called Worlds of Power, and they had stories of Blaster Master and Ninja Gaiden, I believe.
Whoa.
So yeah,
So it's like a crossover between those?
yeah, I don't know. I really wish I could get a hold of these books so I can read them, but from what I heard, a little bit of the story came from Worlds of Power. So
Okay.
I don't want to
Ah.
reveal anything because I feel like anyone that's interested in playing Zero, Blaster Master Zero, the series. They should
Okay.
experience it for themselves. And then once they finish it, if they're interested, this is what I usually do. Just kind of do a Google search and see what the history is with all the references. And there are a ton of references to,
Interesting.
yeah, the Japanese game, the original NES game, and the Worlds of Power books. So, but yeah, I felt it was a very rewarding experience. It was
Hmm.
well worth playing because it feels like Blaster Master, but it feels like now there's a good story behind it. There's a lot of gameplay elements to it that are added from the original. The
Hmm.
music's very good. I
Yeah.
think it's from Ippo Yamada, who did some chip tunes for Mega Man games.
Okay.
So, yeah, and it's by Inti Creates and coordination with Sunsoft. So, Sunsoft made the original, so you know that it's going to stay true to the original. So, I would highly recommend it. Yeah.
Nice.
So,
No,
Zero
I
Three.
own the first one, and I played it maybe about a third of the way through.
Yeah.
That was a game that I bought when it was on sale in the eShop, and I think I was taking a trip up in Colorado,
Yeah.
and so I was just like, maybe I'll just like play something fresh, like while I'm out of town, and like I was really actually pretty surprised by like the overall quality of that game. Like it's a delightful little love letter to that era of 8 and 16-bit gaming.
It
Like
is. And
really beautiful artwork, great music.
yeah. And yeah, just the gameplay itself, it feels like you're not deviating too much from the original NES game, at least for
Hmm.
Zero One. Zero
Right.
Two actually makes a big jump. And that's kind of the reason why. Well, Zero One, I played from beginning to end. Like, I just played it nonstop.
Hmm.
And I finished it within a week. And that was very fun. With
That was a
Zero
launch
Two,
title, wasn't it?
yeah, I don't remember, to be honest, but
I think it came out like right about the same time as the Switch, though.
oh, okay. Maybe it did because well, I didn't have a Switch at a time. I played it on my 3DS. But
Okay.
just to let people know, Zero Two changes the dynamic. I won't say what it changes, but it does feel like a bit of a different game, and that's why I played it for a couple hours and I was like, "You know what? I'm probably gonna, you know, parking lot this game until maybe in the future when I have more time to invest and really enjoy it." And then
Yeah.
that happened recently because summer vacation, I don't have to teach any classes. I said, "Let's go," and
Nice.
yeah, it took me about a week to finish, and yeah, I loved it. Can't wait to play the third. I'll probably try it as soon as today. So yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
All right. So that's now playing. Um, our last segment, you posed this excellent question.
All
So I'm going to let you answer it first.
right.
If you could go back in time and snag a video game item that you used to own, regardless of cost, and return it to your collection, what would it be?
This is a good question for me because I already said I'm a big fan of portables, and that includes Game and Watch and
Hmm.
other handheld devices or tabletop games. If you remember the Coleco tabletop games,
Hmm.
they had Donkey Kong, Frogger, Miss Pac-Man,
Right.
things like that, right?
Hmm.
So, I love those games, but as a kid, uh, I wasn't the best at taking care of them. So
Of course, none of us were.
eventually, they
We
would
all
either,
beat our
yeah,
stuff up. I mean, that's
yeah.
just how it was.
So they would either break or my mom would be like, "Oh, you don't need this anymore. Bye." Throw it in the
Hmm.
trash, and that would get so mad.
Hmm.
So, I would definitely bring one of those things back, definitely. And not to sell, but to play, obviously not to sell. So
Okay.
I'm kind of torn between two items, and it would be a hard decision because I love both games very much. One of them being the Super Mario Brothers Game and Watch,
Mm-hmm.
because now that is quite rare, and
Mm-hmm.
also it was in the latter stages of Game and Watch where they were starting to phase it out, the brand, and it was one of the final titles, and it was very fun. It was
Mm-hmm.
a little bit like more involved than the usual Game and Watch, and the graphics, well, the LCD. I don't know if you say etchings or drawings or whatnot, but it looked
Right.
fantastic.
Had more
So
frames than those games usually do.
yeah, so that would be either that item I would bring back, or I also had a tabletop Cubert from Parker Brothers, if you ever seen
Mm.
that. So like I said, Coleco made a line of tabletop products that people remember the most, but Parker Brothers made a one-off of Cubert, and that
Mm-hmm.
thing was so much fun. I played it so many times that I
Nice.
lost the battery cover for it. I remember I had to use that big, it's not duct tape, but it's clear tape, but it's much wider
It's like
to,
packing
to
tape.
to hold the four double D was it 4D batteries
Oof.
just to play it. I
I
don't remember if it's C or I think it's C, sorry, not
think
D,
they were
but
C batteries. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But without a door that I lost or broke or whatever, you need something to hold it in place. So I remember I had to tape it every time I had to replace the batteries. But yeah, that thing I love to death. And yeah, Cubert is one of my all-time favorite games. So yeah,
Nice.
I would probably I would steal that from my childhood self the minute I get it and then take it back with
Nice.
me and tell myself, deal with it. You'll see in
And you
30
just leap
years.
into the portal watching your younger self
Yeah.
cry.
See you in 35 years.
You'll understand someday, son. Goodbye.
Goodbye. So that's my item. How about you, James?
um, well, it's funny that you bring up Game and Watch because I do remember very fond memories of. I had one of those tabletops, but it was one of the Nintendo little red tabletops. It was
Oh,
Mario Cement Factory,
nice. I had the Game and
and
Watch handheld, not the tabletop, unfortunately. But
yeah,
yeah, I've seen that
so
before.
that one was really cool. And in fact, I can actually remember taking that with me to go see Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom at the drive-in. And
Really?
yeah. And
Wow.
it was funny because you know, I can remember my mom looking at me in the back seat and just alternating between playing this game and looking up the movie. And she was just like, your attention span is going to be completely shot by the time you're 15.
Dude,
And I was
this
just
was
like,
before
what?
tablets.
I know. I'm like, I'm having fun. Leave me alone. Um, but that is not the item that I think I would restore to my collection.
Really?
No. And this may be because of the news surrounding it, but
Hmm.
I was also a big Saturn person,
Yeah.
and I bought a copy of Panzer Dragoon Saga at
Uh,
retail when
yeah.
it dropped, and I played it through to the end, thankfully.
Yeah.
Um, and that game, I only barely understand now, how many things that game was doing that other games were not
Yeah.
at the time. I mean, to have a role playing game that had a fully realized 3D world, this is not rendered backdrops a la Resident Evil, as was the technique used in the PlayStation era Final Fantasy games.
Yeah.
This was a fully realized 3D world. The battle system was just unbelievably special in the way it sort of mixed elements of the shooters with something that was more turn based and had more strategy to it. And obviously, between the price of that game just skyrocketing in the years since,
Yeah.
and the apparent story that the source code to that game has been lost.
Yeah.
Um, you know, that is a really, really, really special game. And I doubt I'll ever muscle up the cash to specifically drop on a copy now because
How much is it now?
I want I want to say it's in the four figures now.
Are you serious? 4 figures?
Yes. Well, I
Oh
mean,
my
it has a
god.
really, really low print run. I believe the US English version of it is only something like 5,000 copies.
Wow.
Like it's really
I
there's most of the copies of it floating around now are Japanese.
Yeah, I was gonna say you would probably have a better chance of getting the Japanese version
Right,
because I've seen some.
and that one's available for a fraction of that
Yeah,
cost.
like
Yeah.
I would think it's about less than 20,000 yen, I would think, which is
Yeah.
about, US $200. So,
No, it's
yeah.
it's well under that. Like I was looking around on eBay
Yeah.
um just for shits and giggles because I was actually gifted a dead Saturn recently that I'm gonna open up and I'm gonna see if it's just like a laser thing, and I might wind up going with like a ODE solution, like the mode or something like that,
Yeah.
because I do really miss that era of gaming. Um, but yeah, I can't see myself ever actually ponying up for an English language copy of that now because it's gotten just ridiculously expensive. But yeah, I
Yeah.
would I would restore my US Sega Saturn copy of Panzer Dragoon Saga.
Wow. I kind of have a similar story, and
Yeah.
it has to do with, guess what, a Game Boy Advance game. um,
Uh
I used to have a copy of Ninja 50. Do you know that
oh,
game?
I knew this is where you were going.
And guess what? After like a month, I was thinking, I need cash. I'll probably see this game around again. So I sold
Mhm.
it.
Right.
And then that I didn't know that that thing had such a low print run. And now I don't know how much it is now. It's probably about $200 at least. But
I think it's actually considerably more than that now, Ed.
yeah, but I'm kicking myself every day for not keeping that game because, I played a little bit of it and it's fun, but
Well, you
I
had
was
a
like,
pretty dope Game Boy Advance library at one point.
yeah, I still have Double
Mm.
Dragon Advance, the retail copy that,
Well, I know
I bought
that's
day
just your
one.
shit. Like
Yeah, yeah. That will never leave my.
you'll be buried
No.
with that.
No, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I want that buried with me, on my,
Uh-huh.
lapel pocket of my suit when I'm,
Uh-huh.
dead, but but anyways, Ninja 50, yeah. It got to the point where I actually went on eBay and I tried to buy a copy, and then, lo and behold, someone sold me a bootleg, and I had no
Uh,
idea until I
yeah.
played it, and then I was wondering, "Well, it plays fine, but why is my health meter never going down?" And I had to
Oof.
look up on YouTube and see what's going on. Like, I don't remember this. And then
Right.
I found out it was a bootleg. And then I had to
Wow.
report the guy on eBay, get my money back. And I still don't have a copy of Ninja 50. So that's
Yeah.
something that, hopefully I'll get to play it again someday by hook or by crook. But yeah, that's how bad I want this game. I actually, I remember I paid $70 for it through this
Hmm.
guy, and then it looked fine to me. The label even looked fine to me, but then just like I said,
Well, I think particularly now the value of so many of those games has gone so high that like
yeah.
people put together really sophisticated looking bootlegs now.
Yeah, but if you're gonna make a bootleg, I mean, you might as well go all the way and like make it a working ROM. You know what I mean? Why you gotta tip me off like that? I would have been
Right.
perfectly fine, and probably like when I'm 80 years old and I find out you're telling me this is a fake. Oh, kill that bastard! Oh my god!
Yeah. No, I mean totally. That's actually really funny that you would probably just own it today and not have ever thought twice about it if it had just
Yeah, if it
functioned
worked,
normally.
I would have thought it was legit to this day, you know?
It's really funny that you bring up bootlegs and a game not working correctly, because that actually brings me to my own sort of second place item that I would restore to my collection.
Yeah.
So after working at the crappy video game store for a very long time, I worked at a large used bookstore here in Tucson that also had an
Yes.
electronics department.
Yes, the famous
And
store.
mhm, and in my time there, I had pretty much amassed like one of every console,
Yeah,
because that was really one of the absolute perks of working there, is that
definitely.
you'd be there when stuff came in and you'd get it for a smoking deal, and
Yep. Take it
that was
home.
awesome. And
Yep.
so for a time I was getting really, really heavily into the Neo Geo,
Yeah.
and I had sort of a Supergun and Neo Geo MVS board solution. Um,
Mhm.
and one of the first MVS cartridges that I attempted to buy was one for Garou Mark of the Wolves.
Yes, excellent game.
And there's a telltale thing with bootlegs of that game where, and I forget exactly whose stage it is. I think it might be one of the evolutions of Terry's stage with the bridge
Is
that
it
sort
the
of
train
scrolls
one?
back and forth. Yeah.
Oh,
No,
okay.
not the train. There's a bridge
Oh,
um, that has like this really like impressive sort of line scrolling effect, where like the bridge sort of it kind of line shifts from left to right in this really impressive way that makes it look more like a three-dimensional object.
yeah.
And pretty much if it's a bootleg, that effect will be completely broken in the ROM, and like it doesn't scroll correctly.
Oh,
However, I didn't know that,
yeah.
and shortly after having the cheapo MVS version of it, I was beginning to buy and sell a lot of games on eBay at the time, because I had this incredible access because of my kind of crappy job.
Yeah.
And I actually plunked down for a really nice Japanese copy, home cart copy of Garou Mark of the Wolves.
Yeah.
So I wound up selling the MVS cart, and I got in like really deep shit because the person that I sold it to wound up figuring out later on that it was a bootleg.
Oh,
So I inadvertently sold this dude a bootleg of a Garou Mark of the Wolves cart, which, I just ended up, I was like, just ship me the cart back and I'll give you your money back. Like, I feel terrible that this happened because I didn't even know.
yeah.
Um,
Wow.
but yeah, I guess if I could also restore an item to my collection, it would be that snazzy Japanese copy of Mark of the Wolves with that glorious big fat bold kanji on the spine and the yellow artwork.
You had that at one point?
I did.
Oh,
I
yeah.
know.
Just make sure you don't get the bootleg, because you'll come
Exactly.
back in time and say, "Oh my god, I got the wrong one, the stupid
Right.
bridge."
And I remember exactly what that stupid, shitty bootleg looked like. I mean, it was in like this. I should have been tipped off by like the funky green
Yeah.
MVS cart case, but those carts kind of all came in different. Like some were black, some had like weird clear cases, some were white.
Yeah.
That was a very sort of lawless. That whole realm of like MVS carts and arcade boards, like there's an
Yeah.
entire universe now of like a knowledge base that just didn't exist around the year 2000, the
Well,
way it
yeah,
does now.
definitely. This is a PSA for all our listeners who are starting to get into retro games and trying to buy these old carts. You might want to do your research and see
Yeah.
how, the ROMs, if
Hmm.
how they work correctly, or even like, the cart builds themselves. Like you can look at the back and see like, oh, is it using this type of screw, or where's the placement of the screws, things like that.
Yeah, if it's
Little
got
things
ROM
that'll tip you
chips that
off.
have like those little open windows and they're
Yeah.
not like finished burned ROM chips, like
Yeah.
there's all kinds of telltale ways.
Yeah.
And really one of the key things, like if you're ever looking at like buying something expensive like that on eBay,
Yeah.
and you email the seller, if they're not willing to open that thing up and show you the boards,
Yep.
that's a giant red flag, and you shouldn't buy from them.
Yep. Especially if they want that much money, because, you know, if they want that money, they'll have to do that for you, or else no sale, and they'll find someone else, I'm sure. But then they're going to end up, you know, if they find out that it's a fake, they're going to have to pay back that money anyway. So,
Yep.
yeah. So,
We
yeah.
just want you to be safe.
Yeah. It's all about safety. That's another phrase. Another phrase we like to quote.
So at any
that's
rate,
our thing.
Speaking for myself and GameAgent ET, we hope you've enjoyed this first episode of Oh God, It Hurts.
Oh God, it hurts.
We're definitely going to come back with more of this.
Yeah.
Find it wherever it is, and yeah, that's all we've got.
I'll definitely push it.
Yeah.
I am on Instagram under GameAgent ET, GameAgent ET. You can find me on mostly Instagram. I do have a Twitter account, but Instagram's more active. And how about you, James? What about
I'm
your
also
social
on
media?
Instagram. I can be found at Super Mario Kart. But yeah, we will probably wind up doing like podcast specific social media channels, but like we just haven't gotten there yet because we're starting this thing out. But at any rate, we hope you've enjoyed it. You got any last words, Eddie?
I hope this is the start of a very beautiful thing. Thank you once again for asking me to join, and I love you guys, and thank you so much, and see you next time.
Oh God, it hurts!
Oh God, it hurts! Thank you.
Peace out.
Bye.